How's it going, friends? It's Alyse here, and in today's video we are going to cover such an important topic and framework for how to have those hard, challenging conversations with more ease, with more confidence, with a game plan for yourself, and I'm so excited to share this with you. What I'm going to cover in this video is something that I've personally been using in my own life, in my own relationships for the past decade, and supporting so many of my clients with the same process too. By the way, if you're new here, I share videos on this channel about mindset, self-awareness, conscious living, and my personal life here on planet Earth. So if you're interested in any of those things, be sure to click the subscribe button down below. And without further ado, let's get into the video. So first and foremost, I strongly believe that communication is the foundation to all relationships. It is what all of our connection grows from. Or on the contrary, it's what kind of tears our relationships apart. So it's really important that we feel comfortable, we feel confident in our communication skills with the people that we love, with people that we work with, family, friends, significant others, literally everybody. This has the power to create so much more connection and harmony in our lives. And since we are social beings and quite literally need socialization and connection to live a healthy life, this is really important. So for anyone out there who feels like it's just kind of challenging to set boundaries, to uphold boundaries, to ask for what you want, to speak your feelings, to speak your needs, maybe you just feel like misunderstood more often than not, I want to share a little reframe with you. So although the title of this video is How to Have Tough Conversations, I want to offer the reframe of, instead of going into a conversation with the idea that it's going to be tough or challenging or hard, and that the other person still might not understand you or you may not get each other at the end of it, why don't we call it supportive conversations? So whenever there is a situation in your life and you know that there's a conversation that needs to be had, and you notice yourself speaking about it as if it's going to be challenging, you can reframe that to, I know that this is going to be a supportive conversation. That in itself is going to change the way that you're going into it. I have 7 steps to share with you today. I've got a little outline, which I'm also going to share this whole framework with you in the video description. So if you're more of a visual and you want to see it broken up step by step, then you'll have that, and also so you can use this moving forward and practice this. Step number 1, set the intention. A couple of examples for what your intention may be. My intention for this conversation is to bring us closer together, to create more connection between you and the other person, or for you to practice vulnerability. Like literally my main intention in this is just to practice being open, to practice being vulnerable with this person. Or my intention might be, by the end of this conversation, we have a clear solution for how to better support each other moving forward. So maybe wrapping up something that happened in the past, kind of airing out what might have been under the rug, any resentment, any misunderstanding, and to have a clear direction moving forward if anything like that happens again. The purpose for having a clear intention is to right off the bat establish teamwork. Working together with the other person, working together as a team, versus it being me versus you or you versus me. So the intention is what you will lead with. So you'll go to the other person and say, hey, I'd love to have a conversation with you, and my intention in this conversation is to grow closer together, to clear out a few things that happened in the last week and to better understand each other. And what this does right off the bat is it's creating a shared goal between you two. Step number 2 is to ask for consent or ask for opt-in. Here is the thing. If you do not ask for opt-in or consent and you just go straight into talking about something, it's likely that it could lead to more disconnect between you two, or just overall being a waste of your time and energy. You could just be speaking at this person when maybe they're in a rush, they have something they need to get to, they don't have the emotional capacity to dive into that right now. And I think that's one of the main reasons why communication goes south sometimes, is because there's not that shared opt-in. So an example of what this may look like is you ask the other person, hey, do you have like 30 to 45 minutes to have a conversation? Or you may ask them, hey, do you currently have capacity for a conversation like this? And if they say yes, amazing, you're good to go. And if they say no, then you can respond with, okay, awesome. Well, this is really important to me, so when might you be available to have a conversation? Step number 3 is to create safety within yourself, since you're responsible for the way that you're coming forward into a conversation, is to have already downregulated your nervous system. So if you feel worked up about a topic that you're about to talk about, then it's really important before diving in to take a few moments to breathe and to feel your body, to feel more relaxed in your body. So maybe a few moments of meditation, maybe feeling the ground beneath you, maybe noticing the sounds around you, again breathing, and a little bit disconnecting from the story and the situation that you're about to talk about, because you've probably planned it out a lot, you've thought about it a lot, and it's important to feel at ease within yourself. That's going to change the way that the other person feels in your presence, because we're very sensory beings. We can sense if somebody is extremely angry under the surface or freaking out and feeling anxious under the surface. So since we're responsible for ourselves, one thing we can do to create safety is relax. And the purpose of this is to create an environment with the other person, for the other person and yourself, that's more open versus defensive. Step number 4, once you have created that sense of safety within yourself, step number 4 is to attune to the other person. So be aware of the other person, sense into the other person. And you can do this visually by looking at their body language. So do they seem kind of closed off? Are they crossing their arms or crossing their legs? Are they kind of like moved back or leaned away from you? Are they making eye contact, or are they looking around in other places? Are they fidgeting in any way? Feel into them. Do they feel open in that moment, or do they feel closed off? I guess this is a good time to share that this process is really designed for in-person conversations. Step number 5, which I'm going to get to next, is something that can apply to text message conversations, and you can use bits and pieces of everything I'm sharing in this video for virtual conversations, but this is really designed for in-person, because that's ultimately how we're best going to connect with each other. But if you are long distance and you're having a text conversation, definitely stay tuned for step 5 right after this. Okay, so the purpose of attuning to the other person's state of being, or just being aware of how the other person is feeling and behaving before diving into the main part of the conversation, is so that you can readjust if needed. If they seem a little bit fidgety or just not fully here with you, not fully open, then you can remind them of your intention for the conversation. Like, hey, I just want to remind you before we kind of get into this that the reason I want to talk about this with you is so that we can come closer together, so we can better understand each other, so we can have more ease and harmony in our friendship or in our relationship, and let them know that you care about them, just to ease any anxiety or anything for them that might be under the surface. Like, hey, I just want to let you know that I really care for you so much, and that's why I want to have this conversation with you. Another thing that you can do is you may want to practice expanding your energy. So maybe you're kind of like linear focused on the other person, like you're about to get really heady in your mind and dive into something, and they may feel that intensity coming their way. So you can just practice like expanding your energy. What is it like for you to imagine that you're filling the room in like this spacious, soft, loving, caring energy? Or something that I like to do is imagine that my energy is kind of like this big warm embrace, including the other person. My energy is back behind me, wrapping around me and the other person, and we're both safe in this little bubble. Step 5 is to share. Share your authentic truth. We're going to use the step-by-step process from nonviolent communication, which is your observations, your feelings, your needs, and your requests. The purpose of following these steps in this exact order, the way that I see it, is like to cut through the bullshit, to cut through the assumptions and the projections, and to really just communicate the exact parts that are going to fulfill your original intention of this conversation. So I'm going to use a really, really simple example for this, but you can use this approach for anything, whether it's super small or like really, really intense in your own relationships. The first step that we'll go through is observation. So you'll say, I observed, or I noticed that when you came home last night, you slammed the door. So what's really important about sharing an observation is that it's the exact thing that happened. There's no fluff added in. It's just, I noticed this is what happened. And then you'll share your feeling. So I noticed that when this happened, I felt this. And I'm gonna share a feelings inventory and a needs inventory from nonviolent communication down in the video description so that you can really reference and connect with, like, what was it that I was feeling? So maybe it was I felt scared, or maybe it was I felt frustrated, or maybe it was I felt confused. And then you'll share your need. So I noticed that this happened, or I observed that this happened, and when that happened I felt this because I have an underlying need for blank. So maybe I felt angry or scared or confused because I have an underlying need for harmony. Last but not least, you will share a request, and that is where you are going to request something different in the other person's behavior moving forward. And my request is that next time you come home, you close the door more quietly. Alright, now we're going to share an alternative option for step number 5, which is you sharing. So maybe there's not something that you need to go through all of those steps with, but maybe you just want to share something and have the other person hear you and see you and understand you. One of my mentors introduced something to me called withholdings, where you share something that you've been holding on to, that you've thought about multiple times, that you've been feeling, and that you just haven't communicated to the other person who is involved in the thing. This could be as simple as, hey, I have a withholding to share with you that basically when we were out at that party and you were dancing with that other person, there was some discomfort that came up for me. It just didn't feel good and it's kind of been weighing on me. I just want you to know that that did not feel comfortable for me. So maybe there's nothing that you're looking for the person to change moving forward, but you just want to release something to them. The power of this is that you grow closer together. If you don't do this and you just allow all the withholdings to stack, it creates resentment, which creates disconnection in your relationship. And more of that happens over time if we're continuously harboring things when we could just practice vulnerability and share them. So step number 6 is to check in with both people's experiences. So once you've kind of shared the bulk of what you wanted to communicate, you can ask the other person, like, hey, how are you feeling? How is this landing for you? You can ask them, like, are any emotions coming up or any thoughts coming up for you? Like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And then you'll also check in with yourself. Is there anything that's coming up for you? Like, do you notice after you shared all of that, you're kind of like nervous of what they're going to say, or you're so relieved that you just communicated that? So check in with yourself, ask the other person, and validate both people's experiences. So this one's really important. If the other person is mad, or they're frustrated, or they're confused, or it doesn't make any sense, that is completely valid. It doesn't mean you necessarily did anything wrong. And if you feel really nervous or something went a little weird for you during the conversation, that's perfectly okay. The purpose of number 6 is to just name what is here in this moment. Again, to create more connection, more vulnerability, instead of keeping it all tucked down. Step number 7 is to recap and create closure. So you'll want to come back to the original intention for this conversation and ask yourself, has this intention been fulfilled? Do we feel like we're closer together? Did I practice vulnerability? Do we have a solution for something moving forward? And recap the full conversation. So if the other person spoke up in step number 6 and they shared some things that they felt or their own experience after step number 5, after you shared, then you can recap and say, so what I'm hearing is that XYZ, whatever the other person said, reflecting it back to them to let them know that you also heard them. You were also present as they were sharing. So what I heard from you is that you do understand where I'm coming from, and that you are not aware that any of that was present for me before I shared it right now, and that you are committed to doing this in a different way moving forward. Is that correct? So you'll mirror back to them what they said. And then to create closure, to make sure that the loop is completely closed and there's nothing else lingering at this time, you can ask them, is there anything else that's present for you? Is there anything else you'd like to share with me? Is there anything else that may be helpful for me to know moving forward? And last but not least, how are you feeling now after we've talked this through? And then at the very end, you can ask them, Do you feel complete? Do you feel complete with this conversation? This for me has been so helpful, because in past conversations that I've had, if the other person kind of checks out early, or there's not that like opt-in and agreement on both sides that we both feel complete with this, it can feel a little bit ungrounding, so I like to add that in there too. Those are the 7 steps that I like to follow and that I've found to be so immensely helpful for having conversations with people that I love. There are so many different things that we could need to address in conversations, and this may not be like a 110% one-size-fits-all framework, but I do believe that there are so many different parts of these 7 steps that you can apply to whatever conversation it is that you're going to have with somebody that you care about. Something that I highly recommend is practicing this process with the number 1 person that you feel the safest with. This is how we're going to warm ourselves up to this process feeling so much more natural and embodied and easy and like second nature. When we try this out with somebody who has a really different communication style than us, or maybe that we feel unsafe having conversations with in general, it could kind of create a little bit of a reenactment of, see, like other people aren't down for this, or see, they just don't understand where I'm coming from. So definitely find that number 1 person in your life, and maybe even introduce this process to them if they're open to it, and practice with that person again and again and again, and then you can build more comfort and ease to apply this with other people. All right, love, I know this has been quite a longer video, so if you are still here with me at the end, thank you so much for watching. And if you really resonate with this type of practical tool and you're looking for more things like this to implement into your relationships, implement into yourself and your self-growth journey, then I'd love to invite you to join Ascend, which is my learning platform and community for growth-focused individuals. We have weekly calls inside of Ascend and like-minded community from all over the world. It's a really beautiful place to be, to support your own personal development and stay consistent with implementing the things that you learn. So not just watching the video or learning something new, but actually implementing it into your own life. So I'll share some info about Ascend down in the video description, along with the full template for everything I covered in this video so that you can practice it on your own. And I think that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for being here. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!